Welcome back to the software engineering channel, guys. It's so good to have everyone back. In this series, we're going to be building up on our Slack clone. We're going to be taking it a step further by working on the UI side of things today. We're going to be working on creating different components. We're going to be topping it up with some Tailwind CSS. We're going to be switching from Visual Studio to our browser to check alignment of stuff and those kind of good stuff. And we're going to be doing this with our three technology. We're going to be doing this with Blazor server, Tailwind CSS. For now, SignalR is not in the picture. When we are done building, mocking up our UI together, then we'll start introducing SignalR and backend data persistent stuff. How about we dive right in, guys? So a prerequisite for this particular video is the first video in this series. So the first video in this is a playlist, right? So the first video in this series is this. You go to my channel and you open up the playlist. First video is this. So I would advise that you check up the setup because we're going to be continuing from where we stopped last week. Let's dive right in. Okay, so this was where we stopped last week, and in building any component based front-end design, I'm not a front-end designer, but then we're going to try to do this together. I think the first thing to do is to map out your layouts, and I've done just that here. So this is our, let me show you the end result of what we are going to have at the end of the day. Maybe we can take that from there. So I've been practicing, and I have a branch that has the completed version of what we are going to be building. So let me show you exactly what that is going to be. Okay, so this is the complete version of what we're going to be building. Let's take a screenshot of this so we can write things on it. Okay, so let's look at this side by side with our plan. Okay, so all of this page is what we call the main layout, right? And you'll notice that we splitted the main layout into two sections. Okay. Now, these two sections involve our nav menu. Now, this part is our nav menu. The header part over here is our nav menu. That is our nav menu. That's what we call our nav menu. And now our nav menu also have some components in it. The major components in our nav menu that I perceive, you can do this in your way, right? So the major component I perceived in nav menu is this header search. So we have the header search, and every other thing we're just code inside the nav menu file, right? So this is our nav menu, and also all of this is what I call, all of the rest, if you will, is what I call the body. So we have the body. Now in the body we have an index file. For Blazor, you would usually have an index file that represents the body attributes. So I splitted that into two components as well. So we have the sidebar and we have the chat container. So this is my sidebar. Everything here is my sidebar, and this place is my chat container. Just going to scribble that here. Bad scribbling. Chat container. And now notice that my sidebar is also splitted into two components. I have my team account and side menu, so we can split this. So we call this part of it the team accounts. That's where we have the different Slack accounts, and we call this the side menu. So this part is our side menu, where we have the different types of menu. And also in our side menu we have team account info, and every other thing just aligns. So this is the team account info. So we have the team account info, and we have every other stuff as code inside the side menu file. So that's that about the side menu. So if we backtrack back to our chat container, you notice that in our chat container we have 3 different components. So I'm going to erase this. So you notice that we have 3 different components. First, we have the chat header. This is our chat header. That is the component that holds the information about the current channel we're in, or the current person we're trying to chat with. And we also have the message component. Now this is the message component. That's the component that holds all of our messages. And we also have the chat input component. This is our chat input component. So yeah, basically, I mean, I think that's simple enough, and that was the way I splitted our Blazor components, and that's how we're going to be building. For y'all front-end guys, I hope I did a good job with this component layout. As I said, I'm not a front-end person, but we're trying. Okay, let's dive right in, guys. So having understood this is what is going to be our map for building the Slack clone. So I'm going to hide all of this. Let's go into Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to go back into current version. Okay, so let's give it a build, a rebuild, to be sure everything is fine. And remember, we spoke about the fact that you can achieve auto reload with Visual Studio with Blazor. So rather than building and trying to go back to check, you can just tap this part of the editor, and that's basically gives you the ability to do auto reload and all. Okay, so let's start with a bit of a cleanup. So since we are going to be working on the nav menu first, let's have our code editor and browser organized in this fashion. Okay, so the first thing we're going to be doing is to, we have this already, is to go into our nav menu. Our nav menu already. Okay, so go into our nav menu, and remember that in our nav menu we have just one component that we're going to be considering. We have just the header search, and every other thing is going to be coded into the page. So let's remove, let's go back to our nav menu. Let me increase this. So we are going to have a div. Still a problem. Okay, so we just have a blank page. All right, so we're going to have a div, and we're going to put in some Tailwind. And the first thing this div is going to have is, we're going to have 3 components in our div. Remember, we are going to have, let's see, now let's erase all of this so we're going to split this div basically into 3 parts. We're going to have this section, this as another section, and this as another section. That's basically 3 sections. So that's what we're going to have here. So in our topmost div, we're going to have 3 other divs. I'm going to have 3 other divs. So this div, so the first div is going to take this particular icon. Second div is going to take this icon and this such beautiful tailwind looking input bar, search bar rather. And this third div is going to take this icon. Now for our icon sets, I found an easy way to get icons for Blazor. For me, I mean, this is easy because it uses a lot of icon provider, so you can easily find any icon that you're looking for. I'm going to paste. It's called Iconify, and I think it's an open source project actually. Yeah, I'm not sure, but it's free. Yeah, it's free and very easy to integrate. So it's called iconsets.iconify.design. I'm going to paste the link in description below. That's where we're going to be finding all our icon. Now guys, remember that I said that our Tailwind is configured to use just-in-time compiler. So what that means is Tailwind is not going to pour in all of the CSS transformed style for their utility classes in our app.css. In fact, if you check our app.css now, you can see that it doesn't have a lot of classes, CSS properties. No, this is because we're using just-in-time compiler, and what that means is Tailwind is only going to compile the styles as we add the utility classes. And in order to achieve that, we have to keep a watch on Tailwind. We have to keep a watch on Tailwind. So we have to tell Tailwind to watch our files and make sure that once it sees a new utility class being used, it should compile that utility class into our CSS file. It's as simple as that. You can reference the last setup video to really understand. So this is what we are going to. This is still the same command we used in the last video, but now we are going to add a watch tag here. So what Tailwind is going to be doing is to continually watch for new utility classes and transform them into our CSS file. Give it some minutes to kick up. Okay, so I think mine is okay. Mine is done. No utility class detected. Okay, sure. So Tailwind is just telling me that I can't find any utility class just about yet. So once so we can just let's do something here. Section 1, section 2, and section 3. So we're basically going to test. I'm basically going to test Tailwind. So let's add a flex. Yeah. So if you check your terminal, you will see something different. So you see that Tailwind is actually rebuilding, and now you notice that flex works. So basically that's how we're going to be working. So also remember that I have some background here. We're going to be using this background color as well. Let's change this. You're also going to have Slack nav color. So this should be our Slack nav color. Our Slack header is a lot more deeper than let's get the color. Okay guys, so I quickly went to get our colors. So here we have this is for the deeper parts of our navigation bar, and this is for this is for our, so this is the lighter color and this is the deeper color. So, and with Tailwind, all we need to do is to do a save, and I'm doing that again because I had left that branch previously. Okay, so that works. So let's go to our nav menu. We're going to add this as a background, so you can do Slack_BG, Slack_BG, and I'm going to be doing with full. That just tells Tailwind to make sure that it is taking all of the widths. And to be honest guys, I had to flip through a whole lot of things on Tailwind CSS documentation, and I think you should do the same as well. If you are not familiar with all of these utility classes, you might need to go to the documentation and just read about them. It is very explicit, and in my opinion, I think Tailwind has a very beautiful documentation, because I used all of this documentation as well while I was building this the first time. So you might want to do the same as well. It is extensive and very well written. Okay, so let's pick our first icon set here. All we need is a user is a user icon. I want something more like a line icon. So let's make do with this. So all you just need to copy basically is this span, and that will do. So you can add this here, and you can do a text. You can do a text white to have it show. You can give this a little bit of padding to the side. Should have that icon. Why don't we have the icon here? Okay, so the reason why we do not have the icon is because we had not included this. We have to include this into our HTML file. So let's do that quickly. We can do that in posts. So we can do that here, and we can have just paste. Okay, so you can see our icon right there. Guys, don't bother about this red squiggly. This is because I've been moving from one branch to another, but once I do a rebuild, all is going to disappear, and that's why it's not stopping our build from showing. So we are good, and you shouldn't have that issue. So we can actually give this a size. We can bump up the size a bit, bump up the size to about 30. That should work for us. So we can give our navigation some, so we give this padding of 2. So py simply means your padding top and bottom of 2, and we give it padding left and right of 4, and we align all our items to the center. So the next thing for us to do now is to work on our next component, which is our header search. So what I love to do is to create a component folder. So I'll call this components. So this is where I build all my components, because your pages are different from your components. Of course, for any components-based UI framework, you would understand that easily. So let's have a Razor component here, and this is going to be called header search. Okay, so we're going to have this header search. So we have header search. Now, the reason why Blazor had to do this is basically because of namespace issue. So what we can do is we can copy this namespace out and go to our imports _imports.razor file and have a global namespacing done here. So we are saying add anything that comes from components, and that should be fine. So that's fine. All right, so we have our header search component created. The next thing for us to do is to work on our header search. So in our header search, we have two major things happening there. We have this icon and we have this particular input. So that's simple enough. You can have two divs, have the wrapper div, and we have the other div. The first div is going to be containing our icon, and the other div is going to be containing our inputs. So you can actually go to our icon sets to pick out whichever type of icon suits you. You can just go and do clock and do a search and pick out whichever suits you. But just to make this this exercise faster, I'm going to be coding in the icon name already. I know the icon names that I want to use, so I'm just going to copy the templates and code in the name. So I'm going to be using a simple line icon, simple line icons, and it's called clock. Yeah, so that's the icon I'm going to be using, and I'm going to be giving it a size of 20. Okay, there should be an hyphen here. Simple line icons. It's called clock. Okay, so all right, so we have that. So let's define the size of this particular component. It's still going to be a flex display, and that's basically because we're going to be having two things here. Okay, so let's have the input here as well, so you can see the reason for using a flex display. So this is going to be text as usual, and for now our class is going to be empty. We're going to have a placeholder. A placeholder is going to be search. search Slack. So that's going to be our placeholder. And notice that there are a lot of things that are actually going on in this data inputs. Notice that there's also an icon in it. So we're also going to have that icon featured within this span. So again, I know the name of the icon, so I'm just going to be typing in the name. You can do the same as well. So it's going to be a simple line icon as well, and it's called Magnifier. It's going to also, I'm going to allow it take its default size, so I'm not going to be adding the sizing. It's saved. Okay, so now that we have a flex display, so you will notice that both our magnifier and all that is happening within this, which is both our clock and all that is happening within this div, which is our magnifier and input, are taking a flex display. That's what we want, right? So let's define our width. So this is going to be taking a width of 3/5. This is a fraction kind of width with Tailwind CSS. You can check out the documentation to see what I mean. So okay, let me just brief you. All right, so this is 3/5 and this is 2/5. This is what it looks like. So basically what I'm saying is that my header search component should take about this size of the whole width. That's basically what I'm saying. Okay, so let's work on the first icon. Now I want the first icon to have a margin top. I'm going to push it down a bit. Margin top of 1. I want it to be in the middle, so I'm going to attach a margin auto. I'm going to have a little bit of opacity on it. Opacity of 75, just so to make it to give it that fainty kind of look. All right, so you can see that look. That's a fainty type of look, although it is white, but it's a bit faint. And if you see our final build, that's what we have. Can you see that look? A fainty kind of look. So that touch is what we want. And also we want it to be such that when we hover, it gives us that cursor pointer. So we're going to add a cursor pointer to it. Okay, so once we over, yeah, we have that. All right, that is cool, guys. And now within the icon itself, we can also give it a margin top of 1 just to further pull it down, and imagine also to make sure that it remains within the center. Now let's go to our inputs. All right, just right about that is fine. Okay, so what I want us to do is I want us to add the last icon components instead of this section 3, so we can have them all spaced out. Okay, so let's add the last icon component, which is more like a question mark. The name of the icon is question, I guess, right? So it's still the same. Simple line icons, and it's called question. So I'm going to be giving it a width of 20. So now you will notice that all of our header components are kind of like shrinked, right? So very easy with Tailwind CSS. We can have them have justify between. So what that is going to do is to space them out. You can check Tailwind CSS for how that works. Okay, so yeah, okay, so okay, so Blazor does that on refreshing. It kind of like doesn't refresh the whole thing, and so you might have that on the first refresh, it might not give you what you want, but on the second refresh, it's surely going to give you what you want. I think that's because Tailwind CSS is having to rebuild. So on the first rebuild, it might not produce that style, because as I said, you will notice that it is actually producing all of this style in our app.css, right? So as we use, it produces, and I think that's very beautiful, because what that means is if you do not need a particular class, it shouldn't be in your CSS file. So I think that's a very good idea from Tailwind CSS. Okay, so let's go back. Now that we have the whole thing spaced out, now let's work on our input file. So it's going to be a flex component as well, because we want our magnifier and inputs to be on the same section. So we're going to have flex. It's going to have flex. We're going to have some border, and we're going to have some border color as well. So give it some border color of 100, and we're also going to have some border opacity, because if you check out this design, you'll notice that at the end of the day, our input is not actually showing. Our input is actually inside. That's the trick about designing this particular stuff. Our input is inside, and it's just the border that actually covered the whole thing. So that's the same thing we are trying to replicate here as well. So we have a border opacity as well, just to give us that faint touch border opacity, and we want it to take a width of 5/6. Again, you can check out Tailwind CSS to see the equivalent of this 5/6 fraction. Okay, so I haven't done that. Let's give it some. Okay, so if you have this, you can easily just hit this again. So we have a new. So you have a new new page. Okay, save again. Okay, let's add a bit of rounded MDPY1. Okay, I can see the icon here. I can see this, so I should see it once the page load. Okay, for some reason this is overshadowing our icon, but let's style our icon as well to give us to become visible. So we have, let's give it a margin right, so it pushes our input backward, and also let's give it an items, and so it stays at the end of our build. So this. Okay, let's style our input as well. So let's ask this to take a full width first, and I have an outline. outline of 0 to remove all outline, and we're going to make it transparent. So we have BG transparent, and we want the text inside of it to be white. I couldn't have written all this CSS, guys. I think that's one beautiful thing about Tailwind CSS, giving you that ability to just build a lot of CSS stuff that you wouldn't have done previously. Okay, so for some reason our header search is not taking its full width for some reason. We have to debug now to find out why that is so. Let's see. This is so you can easily do an inspect to find out what the problem is. Okay. We have this, we have that, and we have this. So why is this not taking the full width as said? Oh, I see. So the top div itself isn't taking the full width. What did we do? Oh, okay, so I see. So our header search ought to be a standalone component, not within a div. So we don't need it within a div. It can be a standalone component. So that should make this work, because it was here. So it was doing 3 with 3/5 of that particular div. So now we have this. All right, guys, look at how beautiful this is, and we're able to achieve this with Tailwind CSS in just about a few minutes. I couldn't have done this on my own. Well, I could have, but I think it's going to take me more time. It's going to take me more time. So yeah, so we have that, and I think this is a bit far, so let's work on it. So let's give it we've given it top already. Let's give it a width of 8 and height of 7. And another thing I want us to do is, so the distance, I think that's a problem. The distance between this and this is a bit far. So let's see how to reduce that distance. Okay, so I see what's wrong. So I think the margin auto is the problem here. All right, so guys, we're going to remove margin auto. So this is what we want to achieve. So we don't need margin auto here. That's the problem. Okay, so I also want to give it some effects such that when you hover, the opacity bumps up, just to show you that you're hovering. So you can do this with this. When you hover, the background changes to black, and we have opacity 50. So guys, I'm not so vast with Tailwind CSS, and what I had to do to apply over effects on style is to repeat over. I'm sure there's a way to do it such that you don't have to repeat it. I tried not adding over, but it didn't work, so I'm having to repeat that, but I'm sure there's a way to achieve that without repeating. So look at that. Okay, so let's make it rounded. Let's make that rounded, so we have that rounded kind of feel. And also let's give it a little bit of margin right of 4. So when we over, yeah, so that looks good already to me. So yeah, we are done with our header search components, and that looks beautiful already. So we can go back to our nav menu and complete these other guys as well. So basically we want to do the same to them. Let's give this a width of 8. Give this a width of 8. We give this a height of 7. We just want to achieve the same effect, right? Yeah. We give it an opacity just to dim the white color a bit, 75. We give it a cursor pointer, and we add our over effect. So on over, we change the background color to black, and on over, we change the opacity of the background color to 50. I think we are good. Okay, so let's give it a margin top as well. Margin top of 1 and margin right of 4. So if you ask me, I think we are good with our navigation. I think we are good with our navigation component already. So we can start dealing with our sidebar and our chat container. So oops, this is still doesn't look good. Okay, so let's go down to our icon. Let's give it a margin top of 1, and also imagine auto. That would help us fit it correctly in the center. That should work. So the next thing to do, as I said, that's cool. Okay, so we should have it rounded as well. So the next thing we want to do is to go into our body, and if you notice, as I said, this body is directed to everything within your index.razor file, right? So that's what we have, and I can prove that. Okay, we're good here, and I can prove that to you by doing hello world. All right, so you can see that here. So that's our body. All right, and this is a page, not necessarily a component. Well, it's a component as well, but you know what I mean. And that's why we have this page attributes here, right? So we are going to have 2 major components here. We're going to have sidebar and our chat container. So what I'm going to do within this folder is to add 2 other folders. So this first folder is going to house every component that has to do with our chat, and the second folder is going to house every component that has to do our sidebar. Okay, so we can deal with our sidebar component first. So let's have a sidebar component here. So we can call this sidebar. Then let's have a chat component here. So we call this chat container. Basically just following our layout. So we have a sidebar component and we have a chat container. Okay, that's good. So let's add all of this into our page. Let's add all of this into our index page. So we have a div, and in our div we have our sidebar. Okay, so now you know the solution to this, right? We can easily copy this namespace, go down to our imports and do a using, paste it there. So every component that is within that folder is going to be is not going to need to use the long namespace. So we can also do the same for our chat as well. Save that. So let's go back to our index. So yeah, you see we have our sidebar, and also we want to have our chats container. Save that. Okay, can do this again. So each time you have it stalling this way, you can just do a rebuild again and all is going to be fine. All right, so notice that we have our sidebar and our chat container, which is coming from each of these components. So if you look at our build, you'll notice that our sidebar and our chat container are side by side, right? They are side by side. So that means whatever wrapper is holding both of them should be displayed using a flex. So I have to come here, get to our index file and add a flex, and we want an H screen, we want a full width as well. Okay, so let's go into, all right, so we have that. So let's go into our sidebar and do some work. Okay, so if you notice, in our sidebar, we have two main components. We have the team account and we have the side menu. So we are also going to create those components, and this is what we're trying to achieve. This is the team account and this is the side menu. This is the team account and this is our side menu. All right, so in our sidebar, let's create those components. You can have team accounts, and this is how we keep going. Actually, guys, is basically the same as your React, Angular. It's basically the same concepts, and I find you'll get used to all of the creating of component as Razor file and all of those cool stuff that we love to do already. All right, so side menu. So we can go into our sidebar and have a wrapper, and within our wrapper we have a team account and we have a side menu. And you'll notice how very slim our files are, very slim, and that's beautiful because you are able to really maintain the files. So they're also going to be a flex components because they are side by side, and let's give, so we have our team account and we have our side menu. So let's give our side menu a background color. It's going to take a background color of Slack_BG_BG. I hope our nav took Slack_nav. Okay, so this is supposed to take Slack_nav. So that's supposed to make it a bit deeper than our sidebar. All right, so we have Slack_BG, and we want to have an inner shadow just to bump it up a little bit, inner shadow. And this is going to be taking a width. It's going to be taking a width of, okay, let's see, why is our color disappeared? Okay, so it's just, one of those stuff I told you guys about. So we're going to have a width of 1/4. So as I said, this is the width we're following. It's the width model we're following. So our sidebar is going to take 1/4, and our chart container is going to take 3/4. So basically that's what we are following. Okay, so let's have so let's go into our team account. Let's go into our team account and build up that component. All right, so we are here. So basically, let's see what our team account looks like. So basically, it's just another part of our side menu, and it's all just simple box and a plus icon. So we can have a div. We would always have a wrapper, right? And we can have a div, and we can have those two hard-coded themes. Basically going to hard-code it. So once it's done for one, we can replicate it for the other. So basically what we're focused on is this team account. So let's give it a class. We want team account to take about 1/5 of the full width. We want it to have some border. We want it to have and the border is going to be border right. Yeah, so if you notice this, you notice that we have some grayish looking border. So that's our border right. So we're going to have a border right. We're going to give it a padding of 2. We're going to give it a padding top. Padding top of about 4 more. We're going to give our border some color. It's a border gray, 200, and we're also going to give it some opacity just to make it a little bit faint. Opacity of 25. All right, that should be it for our wrapper. And we can go into our box and start building it out. Okay. Okay, so for our box, it's a simple stuff. We are basically trying to mimic okay, so where did my build go to? Team account, side menu, sidebar, team account, side menu. Okay, so yeah, basically the reason why it's not showing is because we do not have any components yet inside of it. So let's build up our first box. affects bus is pretty much empty as well, but we're going to give it a class of BG Roses. Class of BG Rose of 700. It's going to be taking a full width. It's also going to be taking full height, and it's going to be rounded, rounded large. Let's style experience as well. So we want this to be at the center. So first let's start with the width. So I'm going to give it a width of 80%. This is a customized way of adding a width, and I'm going to give it a height of 45 pixels. And let's give it some border. I'm starting to get concerned, but I'm not seeing anything. Okay, you know what? Let's just add some content here. I'm assuming that's the reason why nothing is showing yet, because we do not. Okay, yeah, so that's it. So you can see that little stuff right there. Okay, so once we are done, it's going to show quite clearly. Okay, so let's have some border gray, 50 rounded large. So that's going to be like the top. Okay, so something is definitely wrong here. Let's see what's wrong. So our paddings didn't work. Yeah, so you notice that our padding wasn't added. That's basically why it was stopped. So our padding wasn't added. So let's see if we can give that another kick. Padding 2, padding top. Okay, so our padding wasn't added. Sometimes you might need to stop TailwindCSS and give it a kick again. Let's see if that solves the problem. I didn't have this problem. Why? I don't know why live coding usually go very weird, but yeah, we'll deal with it. Okay, so you notice that I'm giving TailwindCSS a new kick. It's worked. Okay, so all right. So we're going to basically take out the contents within it, and we're going to give it an MX also and margin bottom of 4. Okay, so I think it's actually taking an 80% width, but then our border looks quite small. Okay, I think that is because our index seem not to be taking a full width. Let's see. Okay, so our index. Okay, so it actually takes a full width. But and this is supposed to take 1/4 of that. Let's see. All right, so it's supposed to be right about that. I'm not sure why it's misbehaving, but let's see. We'll give it a kick again. So 4. All right, that works, guys. So I think it was when our compiler was misbehaving. So sometimes you might need to actually terminate the process and restart it again. All right, so we have this. Let's go back and complete our design. So we are supposed to have an inner padding, basically. Okay, so what this is supposed to represent is basically like the currently selected team accounts. I mean, you know how Slack works, right? So let's add a cursor pointer. Okay, so basically what we are going to do is to do a copy and paste just to mimic another team account, and for the last one, what we are going to be having for the last one would be our icon. So let's copy our icon. So I'm just going to put this in the notes so I don't have to look for it. So copy our icon. I'm going to be using aka our icons this time, plus. So I've taught you how to search for the icon, so you can easily search for the icon all by yourself. I'm going to give it a width of 25. Let's style this. So I want it to have cursor pointer as well, and I'm giving it a padding of 2. I want it to be in the center, so I'm going to give it auto, and I'm going to give it this same width and height, just so they all align. Okay, if you ask me, I think that's all about our. Okay, so this is not supposed to. So by default, we are not supposed to have a border by default, and our border looks thin, ought to be border 2. So by default, on this second one, we're not supposed to have a border. We're supposed to have this border when we over on it. So let's add that. So the idea is when you over, you have the border. Okay, so all right, so that's that about our sidebar, if you ask me, and we can focus on our side menu. So let's go to our side menu. Our side menu is basically divided into, if you check our architecture again, our side menu is divided into just one part. Actually, we have team account info, and basically our team account info is this guy up here. So this guy up here is our team account info, and we have all of the menus downward. So let's code that up. Okay, so it's also going to be within a div, and within our div we have another div. Let's have another container div, and within the container div we have a team account info components. Let's create the component. team account info component. So you can see that already, team account info. So let's code up our team account info. For our team account info, we are going to have a div. It's basically a simple one. We have two components. The first takes a text and an icon by the side, and the second takes a kind of green dots and a naming. So we can have two divs to undo all of those. And on the first div, we have two divs as well. The first div takes the text and the second div takes the icon, basically. So you can have Cyan codes HQ, and here we can have our icon. Notice here, guys, I'm not catering for a responsive design, although out of the box you actually get some kind of very cool responsiveness with Tailwind CSS, but I mean, at some point you need to cater for responsiveness and all of this. So you see that I'm not really catering for responsiveness. It's out of the scope of this tutorial, but we can take a look at that maybe when we are done with adding SignalR feature. We can take a look at that. For now, we're just squarely focused on building out the front end on the normal desktop version. So let's have this as the icon, and the name of the icon is the simple line icon. Simple line icons. It's called notes. Okay, and the size of the icon is basically 15. Okay, so all right, we have that. And for our second component, we basically have for the green dots, we are going to create the green dots using a span. Create the green dots using a span, and of course we're going to have the text using a text paragraph. So okay, so that works. And so let's start adding Tailwind CSS to make all things look beautiful. Okay, so starting from the top, let's add some padding to the top. We want it to take a full width, and we want to have a border on the bottom. If you notice this, notice that we have a gray line border. So we have a border at the bottom, and the border is going to be a gray border, and we also add some border opacity of 25. All right, that's done. And the next thing we want to do for these two components, because they are side by side, we have to introduce flex. So let's introduce flex because they are side by side, and we want them. All right, so you can see this. Okay, so we want them justify between, and we want this to take the full width. Okay, so they're side by side. Okay, so notice that our team account isn't taking the full width of our sidebar. So we need to run some investigation and see why that is happening. Okay, so it's a sidebar. Oh, why is a sidebar taking 1/4 of our sidebar? That's weird. So we're not supposed to have 1/4. Yeah. Okay, so we're supposed to have 1/4 here. But when we go into, so our sidebar is in another menu, right? No. Our sidebar is in our index. Our index is taking a full width. Let's check it again. Okay, so this looks like our index to me. It's taking a full width. And within our index, we have two components. This is our sidebar. Okay, so our sidebar is taking 1/4 of our index. And within our sidebar, we have two components. We have this taking 1/5, and we have this. Okay, so our side menu is not taking the full width of our sidebar, so we have to tell it to take the full width of our sidebar. And that should, all right, so that's the trick. So this is basically how you debug when you have problems like this. Okay, so let me be sure it's taking Android. Okay, so this looks a little smaller now. So let's increase this size a bit. So we have team account. Team account takes 1/5. Let's see, 1/5 and 4/5. So let's make team account take 1/4. Let's see. That's better. Okay, so 1/4 is fine. And we have this take the rest. All right, so that works. So the next thing we want to do in our team account info is to obviously make our div text, which is supposed to be in an H2. So let's make it like an H2. And one thing you should also know with Tailwind CSS is Tailwind CSS strips off all your default HTML styling. So normally you would expect that your H2 should be a bit deep and all of those, but you'll notice that that's not the case. So Tailwind CSS expects you to add all of the styling as well. So I can as well use P, but for the sake of my brain sanity, I'll just use an H2. But as I said, it doesn't really make any difference. You know what I mean? So let's have a 2XL here. I want it increased, and I want a font sans, and I also want it bold. I want it bold. Okay, that's that for that. And let's work on the icon by the side. All right, so I want to give the icon a background white. I want to design something like this for the icon. So I'm giving it a background white and I'm giving it some padding, and I'm changing the rounded corners. I'm giving it a full rounded rounded corner. Okay. All right, so that's that for our icon. Our icon is supposed to appear. Okay, so it's not supposed to be white. I can just use our background color for that, so it can show inside of this. All right, so that works. So the next thing for us to do is to design our span. So let's have so let's design our span first. That's the green dots line. So we basically are going to have a background green of 700. We're going to give it a margin right. Let's give it a width first so we can at least see what we're working on. And just give it some height of the same, right about same pixel. And see the red dots. Where's our green dots? Okay, so let's give it a padding. Yeah, the reason why we're not seeing anything obviously is because there are no contents within the so, but the padding is going to give it some inner spacing. Hope so. Okay, so that's our div. It looks quite tall to me. Okay, firstly let's give it a flex just so it stays side by side with the name. And all right, so that's worked. So next thing we want to do is to let's give it a margin top of about just 2.5. And guys, the reason why I'm able to get the precise number is because I've tried this before, right? I've played with a whole lot of numbers. So yeah, so on your first build, if you're building a new project, you might have to of course juggle with your numbers, but yeah, this is premeditated. So I'm also going to give it a margin right just so you can flow to the right, and I'm going to give it a rounded. All right, so we have that rounded full, so that gives us a full border radius. Okay, that's fine. Let's go to the name. So I'm going to have a text white, and that should be it. Yeah, that's it. So we are basically done designing. We're done designing our theme account info. That's this portion. This portion of the components, and it looks slick to me, guys. So the next thing we want to do obviously is this next part, so we can just call that our side menu. Okay, we have side menu already, so we can just call that menus. So can create components. All right, so you can see menus. So for our menus, we're going to have a div. First, we can look at what we're trying to build. This is what we're trying to build. And yeah, let's dive right in. So let's have a div, and it's obviously a list. So we're going to be making use of our lists item. here. So for our list, we're going to have a div, and the reason why we're going to be having a div is because we're going to be having an icon and a text all together. So we're going to have a div, and the div is going to house an icon, which we're going to add, and also a text. Text is called all widths. So we can copy our icon. So this one is called CI menu alt 01. Let's give it a size of 23. And let's give it some styling, fonts, semi-bold. And okay, so we have this. Let's give the divs above a flex. Yeah, that should make them side by side. And let's give our URL some padding. PY, that's padding top and bottom, and PL, that's padding left of 4. We want to give it a cursor pointer. So yeah, so let's style our text. So we have this. Yeah, so a text should have a font, semi-bold, and should be a large text. For the first one, should be a bit bold. So we have text wide. We're just trying to simulate unread messages. So okay, so we might want to have some margin right, some spacing in between these guys, and we might want to push the icon down a bit. Okay, so that works if you ask me. Let's give some general padding, pyt py top. So yeah, that looks good to me. And yeah, that looks good to me, if you ask. So let's do some little over styling. So you can say on over, we want to have a BG neutral 500, no, 900 rather, and we want to give an opacity of 50. This is another way of adding an opacity to a background. I mean, all of this beautiful stuff are in Tailwind CSS documentation. You can check it out. So it's just the same way as saying, let's see, got that beautiful stuff, guys. Beautiful is this. It's just the same way of saying RGB 000 for black, and then saying 0.5. Right, so that's the same way we had opacity using RGB. So it's the same thing we are doing here as well. All right, so yeah, so we can easily copy this list and replicate. So one thing we can do better here actually is to make this list a component as well, whereby we pass in all of this dynamic content as an input to the component. I'm going to be focusing on all of those dynamics in the next video. For now, we just want to build our UI and make sure we are good for other inner operations, dirty jobs, if you ask me. Yeah, so yeah, let's just build a very good and nice front facing UI first, and we'll focus on all of those later. So we can remove this font bold and we can have font base, and for this we can have an icon called clarity. This is why I actually prefer that particular icon design, because you have different varieties of icons that you can pick from. So as this was 22, basically the same. Can have this class repeated here. You can call these mentions and reactions. And we can change this to art. And we can also have, all right, so look at that, guys. Isn't that cute? Okay, let's have some more. So we have channel browser, apps, file browser, and showless. Okay, so this is going to be a channel browser. And the icon is called Fluent. Bookmark 16 regular. And the next is, let's have apps. An icon is called FE. And the next is file browser. I'm in the flow already, guys. I'm in the flow. On the front end, Blazor flow already, if you will. And we have file browser. This is a material icon, material symbols, file, copy, outline, rounded. This is a bit large. We can just pull it down a bit to aid our site for file browser. And we have the last. So this have a bit of different styling to it. The icon is at about size 18, and it's an ant design up outline. Okay, so you'll notice that that's all about this particular section. All right, that's all about this section. So the next section will be for the channels. All right, so this is the menus. So we can, instead of adding all that set of URLs here, we can just have another component. I know this wasn't added to all of these, but this is a spontaneous decision. So let's just have channels. Let's create another razor. I would call channels. All right, so got these guys. Looks beautiful to me. Okay, guys, so we have channels, and we have channels here, and so we have another set of URLs. And let's have li. Basically almost the same as the previous guys that we've been doing. So we can actually copy from here and paste. So here we're gonna have channels. Difference is, for this we do not want an over. So this is an ant design. Carrots down. 18. It's fine. Channels. Yeah, that should do. Yeah, so that's this. And for individual channels, we have another set of URL. For this, we can have our over, so we can just copy, paste it here. And the first is the add channel menu. Plus yeah. All right, so we have this, and so for now we are going to add code some channels, but all of these channels are going to be generated dynamically when we start to do the backend stuff. So for now, let's just add code some channels in it for the sake of UI, basically. So let's have this called design team. Design team. And next one is going to be Blazor. Blazor engineering. So yeah, basically guys, we are done with this. And also note that our navigation ought to be fixed, not taken away by this. And we ought to have some sort of scroll bar here. Should we add more channels? So let's just do that, so we can have that side fixed once and for all. So for now, you'll notice that the scroll is actually doing a very bad scroll now, so we have to fix that. All of this should be fixed. The only thing that should scroll is the sidebar, and this should be fixed. So let's go and fix that. Let's go to our nav menu. And make it fixed. All right, so our nav menu is fixed now, and you can see that made all of our stuff go inside. It's not taken away, it's just a bit inside. So we have to push it down using some margin bottom. Okay, so let's go to our sidebar and add some margin bottom. And we're going to do that individually. So let's go to team accounts info. So now team accounts info, on the next div, we're going to add a margin bottom of 4. Okay, so excuse me, that was wrong. So margin bottom of 4 should do for that. And okay, so let's go to menus. It's not this relative overflow scroll bar. Why actually? So we'll have it scroll on the y-axis, and should be a flex component as well. And for this, okay, so we have to push this guy down. Okay, so we can actually add a padding top of 50 pixel. That solves it. So a padding top of 50 pixel would obviously just push it down, and all of our contents can be visible. So we have this. Now what we need to do is to take out this particular This scroll bar, our scroll bar should be on the sidebar, not this. So let's try to beef up our menus or channels rather with small item, just to mimic the situation whereby we have a lot of channels. Okay, so our scroll bar shouldn't be here, it should be on this side. So what we want to do is to go to the main layouts and do an overflow hidden. Because we do not want our screen to display that scroll bar at all. We only want the scroll bar to be displayed on this particular axis. So alright, so we need to fix up the scroll bar here. So let's go into our side menu components. We ought to see a scroll bar. Here now. Overflow. Why scroll, not scroll bar? So these are some errors you want to check for. Overflow while scroll. Okay, so there we go, guys. So now the next thing we need to do is to design our scroll bar to have a good look. So you can just add it to the utility class, and yeah, so I'm going to add all of this. So this is basically a style to just add this particular class, and it does all sort of things to style your scroll bar. So all I need to do now is to go to my side menu and add a scroll bar class to it. Once that is done, yeah, so you get this nice design scroll bar. Okay, guys, so that's about our sidebar. So we can remove the dummy data we added. So the next thing we're going to be looking at now is our chat container. So let's go into our chat container, and for our chat container we're going to be creating 3 different components. The first component is our chat header, second components are messages, and third components are chat input. So let's create the chat header. We can have our div. Here we can have our chat header. Here we can have a div, and this div is going to be full of messages, which are going to be dynamically generated once we start the backend stuff. And then we have our chat input, which is going to be our input box for sending messages. Okay, so let's create this component. So here we have our chat header. We have our chat input, and we have message. Okay, so we have all of those created. Let's go to our class. This is supposed to take about 3/4. If you check out TailwindCSS, you'll see the two different width equivalents. Let's give it a margin top as well of about 60 pixel. That pushes our contents. You can currently notice that you can't find any of our contents in there, but that should push all of those contents downwards. Okay, so all right, there you go. So all of this should be in another div actually. So our div should be in flex this time, but this time it's going to have a flex colon as our direction. So instead of the default flex row, this time it's going to be a flex colon. So let's design our chart header first. Our chart header is very simple components. Basically, what we intend to have is this. We intend to have a title and an icon, and a title, a detail, and an icon, basically. So let's have a div here, and we have two divs which we can call the header left and the header right. So for the first div, we can have an h4 just to help our sanity. We basically know that Tailwind CSS strips off all of those styling by default. So you have to add your base style, and for this we can have our icon, that's our star icon. And the name of this icon is basically EI star. So width of 20, measure of text white, save. We should have that for our header left. All right, so we have that. So for our header left, we also have this time a span, which is our icon basically, because our icon comes first in this occasion. So we have our ant designs. We have info circle outlined, and here we have 17. And the next we have our p tag. On p tag we have details. Yeah, so we should have that shop somewhere here. First thing we want to do here is to, okay, so we have details and we have, should have our icon. So this is ants, not an. All right, so what we want to achieve here is to make them flex so they can stay side by side, and we are aligning all of them to the center. And this is still not showing. Ant design info circle outline. Okay, so it's actually showing, but I have text white here, so you want to take note of that. So yeah, so all of those should align. Now let's design the text. Okay, first let's make this align as well. So let's do flex and justify between. So what that would do is our Blazor engineering would be here and our details would be somewhere here. All right, that's that. And let's do a little bit of padding, and we also give it some border bottom. So our border neutral, which will be the color of the border, and we're giving an opacity of 25. Okay, so let's get back to designing the text. We want it to be lowercase transform always. So you can see that. Beautiful. So we want to have text a little bit large. We want a font bold, and we want a margin right, just so to push the icon a bit to the right. And as for the icon, it seems too much at the top, so we can push it down a bit by giving the margin 1. Okay, so let's go to the next text over here, and we need to give this a flex as well. You can see both of them standing in a column direction, so give it a flex. By default, flex takes flex row direction, so that solves that. So let's have a class of fonts bold, and a text, small text this time. And also for the icon, we can give it a margin right of 1 and bring it down a little, an 0.5, margin top of an 0.5. And that should be it for our header. Let's go straight into designing our chart input. Okay, so our chart input is quite simple. It's basically an input box, which is what we have here, these components right here. All right, so it's an input box that contains a form, and on the form we have an input with a type of submit, and this order, say message, please engineering. It should be a type of text, not submit. And we also want to have a button with a type of submit, send. Now, but this button is going to be hidden because we don't want to see the button. We just want to mimic the enter feature, so that each time we click the enter, it triggers the button, but we don't want to see the button, right? So it's just a strategy. So we should see our form. All right, so this is our form. All right, okay. So let's style. So we have a flex. I'm going to make a relative, and we're going to justify it center, justify center, I'm able to spell justify correctly. Okay, so for the class, it's going to be fixed. We're going to give it a padding of 2 on all sides. And as for the text inside of it, we're going to give it a text base. Let's give it a width of 60%. Let's take 60% width. And all right, so you can see that. So we need to remove that black outline that shows. We're going to remove the outline. And let's just start again, because we're going to have some more classes. And going to remove the outline. We can add a border as well. And the border is going to be a grayish border with 800 thickness, and we want it rounded to have some form of border radius. You know what I mean? So this is the other side. Okay, so see what we have. That's cool. So each time you click on the enter, it triggers that. All right, but for now, obviously we've not worked on that. So we also want it at the bottom as well. So we'll do bottom 7. That takes it down to the bottom. And as for outline, it's actually outline none, not this. Outline none. So that should take it to the bottom. All right, guys. So we have our inputs working beautifully. So the last thing we're going to be working on is our messages, right? And obviously we're going to be at coding. All right. So once we begin the real stuff, all of these are going to be coming dynamically, and see how beautifully well we are able to undo the message components, right? All of the components. So it just fits beautifully right in. So for messages is obviously going to be a div, and our div is going to be containing some images. And for now, obviously we're going to be coding our images. So let's create a folder. Create a folder called images, and I'm going to be pulling in some images from my PC. Paste. Okay, so it's images /1.jpg. Okay, so it's capital letter I, because that's where the error is coming from. Okay, so still not seeing our image. Okay, so our image isn't supposed to be inside the CSS folder. Sorry, it ought to be in the roots of our www folder. So let's hit a refresh again. That should bump up our image. So we'll have another div that hosts our messages. Yeah, and our image is quite large, so but we're going to fix it. And you can't scroll because we have that overflow hidden thingy. So let's fix our text. For our text, we have h3, and we have a span that holds that's going to be holding our timestamp, and then we have the real message in a p tag. So I can do hello people, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you. Okay, and for our time span, we're basically going to be hard coding something in it. And for this, I'm just going to be adding my name. And yeah, that's going to be below. You obviously can't see it because of our image has overshadowed it. So let's style the image. Before we style the image, let's have this styled first. So obviously we have it on flex, and we're going to give it a padding left and right of 4, padding bottom of 2, so that every other image can have some spacing between them on the line center. And let's have class for our image. We can have MR of 2, and we're going to give it a height of 14. That's going to help our image to shrink in size, and we want it to have a curvy rounded edge, so we're going to give it that, and we're going to give it a shadow to bump it up a little bit. Okay, so all right, that looks good to me. Let's give this a padding top of 4. Okay, so let's go to our text. For our text, we're going to have a padding top on all sides, and for our inner text, this is going to be flex, so that the name and the time can stay together. And for the naming, let's add some class. Let's give it a text, font bold, to make it bold, and margin right to give some spacing between the name and the time. And for the time, okay, that looks good. For the time, we want it transformed to an uppercase, always a text small, very small, and we want the font to be very light. And just to push it down a bit, let's have margin top 1. So that should work just fine. All right, look at that, guys. Looks very good to me. The font still looks a bit big, so let's give it an extra small font size. Okay, so for the message, let's have a class. The message actually looks good on its own, so you can just leave the message. So I mean, guys, so this is it, guys. This is our Slack cloud. So what we can basically do, because of course we know that we are obviously going to have all of these messages repeated dynamically, but for now, just so to simulate a flow of message, and also we need to work on the scroll feature. So let's have a whole lot of messages. All right, so you can see a lot of messages, and we would need to work on the scroll feature to help us have a beautiful scroll here, the same way we have it there. So let's go into our chat container, and in the div that hosts our messages, we can have a flex, and let's have on height a predefined height of 35 rem and overflow y scroll, and we're going to add a scroll bar. And remember that our scroll bar basically is a class with predefined styles, right? And this is going to be relative because remember that we have the top navigation bar to be fixed. So let's save that, and we should have a beautiful scroll bar by the side. Okay, so we have our scroll bar and we have our overflow. All right, so let's fix all of this. And for our overflow, we need to okay, so we need to have a flex column first. That would help us align all of our stuff on a column mode. Okay guys, so see how beautiful it is. But another thing we might want to do is we want our messages obviously to always show at the bottom, right? So anytime we are refreshing into this, we want the bottom to always show first because that's the last message instead of this. One little trick that I found out is to basically do a reverse on this. So if you do a reverse on this, watch this guys, watch this. It's going to automatically start from the bottom. So you see it starts from the bottom. So each time we add a new message, it's always going to start from the bottom. All right guys, there you go, there you have it. It is Blazor with Tailwind doing this magic. It is beautiful guys. It's also beautiful to see how Blazor has evolved to do all of this beautiful stuff that we do with other front-end frameworks. In the next video tutorial, we are going to be working on the dynamic nature of our application, connecting it with SignalR, and working with dynamic component as well. Don't forget to like this video, share and subscribe, and tell me one new thing you learned in the comment section below, and whatever it is you want to suggest and advise, or if there's anything at all that you want to talk about, you want me to implement in the next video, just drop it down in the comment section below and let me know one new thing you are also going to be trying out with Blazor and Tailwind CSS in the comment section below. Thank you very much guys. See you in the next build. Bye bye.